So for those of you that don't know me, I am Tammy Boylan, and I've had the honor to be the chairperson this year for this event, along with my committee. So hopefully that you will all enjoy today's events. And again, thank you for all coming out on this snowy morning to honor the men and women who have worn the uniform of the United States Air Force. So at this time, I would like to introduce Krista Geer, the Executive Director of Active Aging, to give a welcome.
Good morning. I thought we would be doing this outside, so I made my comments more brief than usual. You're welcome. So I want to thank you all for being here today. Your presence means more, I think, than you might realize, because when we gather like this, we remind one another that gratitude still matters, that community still matters, and that the sacrifices of our veterans will never be forgotten. To our veterans, thank you. Thank you for your courage, for your strength, and your service. Thank you for the long nights, the heavy memories, and the quiet sacrifices that most of us will never know about or never see. You gave up time with family, comfort, and certainty so that the rest of us could live in freedom and peace. In a world that often feels divided and uncertain, your service reminds us what unites us. You stood for something larger than yourselves, for the ideals of liberty, equality, and justice that bind us together as Americans. You showed us that even in our differences, we are one nation, and that freedom is both a gift and a responsibility. Today, as we honor you, may the rest of us look inward. May we find ways to serve each other, to listen more deeply, and to bridge the divides that separate us. Because the freedoms that you fought for, the ones that we often take for granted, are only as strong as the unity and compassion that we show for one another. So from the bottom of our hearts, thank you for all that you've given and all that you continue to give. We honor you not just with our words, but with our commitment to live in a way that's worthy of your sacrifice. Again, welcome, and thank you all for being here. I'll let you do the next one.
All right, now please join me in welcoming Jenna Miller from Vantage Healthcare, who has been one of our valued sponsors for many years.
Good morning, everyone. Today we gather to honor the extraordinary men and women who have served our armed forces. Veterans Day is a time to reflect on the courage, dedication, and sacrifice that have safeguarded the freedoms we cherish. On behalf of Vantage, I want to extend our deepest gratitude to all veterans. Your service is a testament to resilience and commitment, values that inspire us every day in our work and in our lives. We recognize that the freedoms we enjoy and the opportunities we have are built on sacrifices you and your families have made. Your strength and integrity set us an example for all of us. As we celebrate today, let us carry forward the spirit of service and unity that our veterans embody. Thank you for your courage, your sacrifice, your unwavering dedication. From all of us at Vantage, we honor you. Thank you.
All right, I'd like to introduce Reverend Black to give the invocation.
Good morning. Let's pray. God, Lord of all nations and keeper of our hearts, we gather today in gratitude and remembrance. We thank you for the men and the women who have worn our nation's uniform, for their courage in battle, for their steadfastness in peace, and their willingness to serve causes greater than themselves. As we honor their service, we remember that freedom is never free, and that its cost has been borne by those who stood guard on distant shores, by those who carried the burdens of war and the quiet weight of sacrifice. May our hearts this morning be filled with gratitude, not only in words, but in the way that we live. And God, we pray for a broader vision of the needs of humanity and deeper compassion to fill those needs, for planting the seeds of concern for all of humanity in our hearts, for tapping a wealth of generosity. Give us that. And may we live together as those who have been given a great debt that has been forgiven. May we be gentle, walking softly with one another. May we be understanding, lest we shall add to the world's sorrows or cause to flow needless tears. May we be as anxious for the rights of others as we are for our own. May we be eager to serve and to forgive as we seek forgiveness. May we know no barriers of creed or race or station, that our love may be like yours, a love that sees all your people as your children and our kin. May we be ministers of humanity. Bless, O Lord, the veterans among us, those still serving, and those who now rest in your eternal care. Grant healing to the wounded, comfort to the weary, and peace to every heart that carries the memory of loss. Lord, bless those that have joined us this morning for putting their lives on the line, both in their service and for making it here through the weather. And as we go forth, may we prove ourselves worthy of their sacrifice by seeking your peace, serving others, and building a nation that honors the legacy through justice, mercy, and love. Through your grace, in your holy name we pray. Amen.
At this time, please rise as we welcome Darcy Schoenfeld and Luca White, who traveled a great distance to be here with us this morning. So we're super appreciative as they lead us in the singing of the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
All right, now let's have a moment of silence. And I'd like to introduce Esther Kostelnik, an Army veteran and the Vice President of our Advisory Council, who's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Tammy. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
All right, since we're out of order, we're going to head right on into the missing man ceremony. So if you're over by the door, if you'll have a seat or move to the side, Post 52 is going to lead us in the missing man.
Good morning. On behalf of veterans of the Vietnam War, Jack Greer Memorial Post 52, I would like to present to you the missing man ceremony. Please direct your attention to the table placed in front of the gazebo or in front of the room. It is a physical symbol of the thousands of Americans, POWs, and MIAs still unaccounted for from all of our foreign conflicts. We would ask you to reflect in silent prayer for those warriors who have yet to find their way home. Now, we would like to explain the symbolism of the ceremony as the Veterans of the Vietnam War Post 52 Honor Guard places the items upon the table. For those who have served and those who are currently serving in the uniformed services of the United States of America are ever mindful that the sweetness of enduring peace has always been tainted by the bitterness of a personal sacrifice. We are compelled to never forget that while we enjoy our daily pleasures, there are others who have endured and may still be enduring the agonies of pain, deprivation, and imprisonment. A reminder for all of us to spare no effort to secure the release of any American prisoners from captivity, the reparation of the remains of those who died bravely in defense of liberty, and demand a full accounting of those who are missing in action. We call them comrades. They are unable to be with their loved ones and families, so we join together to pay humble tribute to them and to bear witness to their continued absence. The table is small, symbolizing the helplessness of one prisoner alone against his or her oppressors. The tablecloth is white, symbolic of the purity of their intentions to respond to their country's call to arms. Our comrades are missing from the United States Army. Our comrades are missing from the United States Navy. Our comrades are missing from the United States Air Force. Our comrades are missing from the United States Marine Corps. our comrades are missing from the United States Coast Guard. The single rose in the vase signifies the blood they may have shed in sacrifice to ensure the freedom of our beloved United States of America. The rose also reminds us of the families and friends of our missing comrades who keep faith while awaiting their return. The red ribbon on the vase represents the red ribbons worn on the lapels of the thousands who demand, with unyielding determination, a proper accounting of our comrades who are not among us. A slice of lemon on the plate reminds us of their bitter fate. The salt sprinkled on the plate reminds us of the countless fallen tears of families as they await. The glass is inverted. They cannot toast with us at this time. The Bible is placed prominently on the table. The Bible represents the strength gained through faith to sustain those lost from our country. The United States was founded as one nation under God. The chair is empty. They are not here. The candle is reminiscent of the light of hope that lives in the hearts to illuminate their way home, away from their captors, to an open arms of the grateful nation. The American flag reminds us that many of them may never return and have paid the supreme sacrifice to ensure our freedom. Let us pray to the Supreme Commander that all of our comrades will soon be back with us in our ranks, and let us remember and never forget their sacrifices. May God watch over them and protect them and their families, and may each of us live worthy of their sacrifices in a way that we love and serve. Thank you.
So it's time for our first speaker, and it's with great honor that I would like to introduce Granville Goza III. Granville grew up as an Air Force brat, living in Germany, France, and several other United States before graduating from, I'm not going to pronounce it right, Kaiserslautern. He's giving me the thumbs up, so I must be okay. American High School in Germany. He earned his bachelor's degree in geography and history from Louisiana Tech University and was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the United States Air Force in 1965. His primary specialty was aviation. His first operational assignment was in Kuro Air Force Base in Thailand, and he flew the H-43 Rescue, which he transferred to Vietnam flying the H-43 in Combat Rescue. He also served in Southeast Asia from October of 1966 to October of 1967. And from there, he was assigned to England Air Force Base in Louisiana. In 1969, he converted to the fixed-wing aircraft and flew C-141 air cargo transports out of McGuire Air Force Base. He's flown all over the world. He was selected for the United States Air Force Joint Rescue and Recovery Center at Ramstein Air Force Base, Germany, and served there from 1971 until 1976, where he coordinated rescue missions with our forces and NATO countries. While there, Granville was the chief space flight recovery for the Eastern Atlantic and European region during the Apollo-Soyuz mission. His military awards include 2 Distinguished Flying Crosses, 1 Meritorious Service Medal, 9 Air Medals, 1 Air Force Commendation Medal, and 1 Combat Crew Member Medal. So please join me in welcoming Granville Goza.
Encore. All right. Good morning, everyone. Good to see you. Unfortunately, the weather has kept a lot of people away from here, I do see, but I'd like to see everyone we do have here. Today I'll be talking to you a little bit. Well, first off, from an aviator, I want to extend my appreciation to the people who fought the war on the ground. My hat's off to you. And also I'd like to express my admiration for the people who were not doing the aviation, but they were doing their jobs, which allowed us to do our job. So anyway, I'll tell you a little bit about the Air Force rescue system. Most people are not really aware of the air rescue system that is part of the Air Force. Take us back to the 1960s. This was the helicopter that the Air Force had selected. The role that they had there at rescue was the local base rescue environment, which I'll tell you about a little bit more later. But anyway, the Air Force would have multiple detachments, which would have 2 of these helicopters and roughly 40 personnel, pilots, flight engineers, firemen, and the support staff. And the Air Force, and these units were displayed throughout the world, the United States, Asia, and Europe as detachments at mostly bases that were dealing with the jet fighter type things. Next slide. This is the actual helicopter. It was easy to fly from my standpoint. It was twin the rotors were intermeshing. We did not have a tail rotor, as you may not have seen, but it was a very capable aircraft for a limited role that was suited for it, which was, well, you'll see a little bit more about in a few minutes. But it could fly about 180 miles at roughly 120 miles an hour. That was our range. It could fly up as high as 25,000 feet, and it could lift, in the civilian world, when it stripped down, up in the northwest, it would go in, and when the people cut down the trees, it would pick the tree up and lift it out and take it down from the mountain. But getting back to the Air Force, with that, with A-1B detachments all around the world. The next slide. Next one. We'll go back. What is the local base rescue type thing? Next slide. We would be at the base during normal, especially fighter operations. When an aircraft declared emergency coming back in, Our job was to cover that at that time. Remember, this is the 1960s. Helicopter was a fairly new thing back in that time frame. And as they were declaring emergency, we would launch, scramble out of there. We would, at that time, we carried 2 firemen in the aircraft. We'd jump up, pick up this 2,000-pound fire extinguisher, and we would launch and go out to near the end runway and orbit while the other aircraft came in. When it came through, we would follow it down. If it landed normally, we would break off, go back to the alert area. If it was not, it crashed. We would deploy the fire extinguisher down at the appropriate position, drop back down, let their firefighters off. The firefighters would go start the extinguisher, start their going into the crew department. We would jump up about 10 foot higher, and our rotor wash would keep the flames way down if it was a fire. And they would go in and get the, hopefully get the crew members out. It did not happen all that often, but it did happen. And occasionally, a few occasions, our aircraft were blown out of the sky when bombs or something like that did go off. But that was in the war zone. Next slide. You see that situation where we're hovering over the firemen as they're going into a practice fire. We did do a practice, etc. Next slide. Okay, with the detachments throughout the world, Southeast Asia called it the need for 14 additional detachments had to be created and moved over into Thailand and in Vietnam. So there was never that many helicopter pilots in the Air Force, so they were really getting strained. And to man these units, our crews would be there for 30, 60, or 90 days, and then be rotated back to their location. Of course, all the other detachments were drained of some of their people. So there was a need for more helicopter pilots. So the Air Force was out there searching and through their inventory of pilots and put them back in, and TACM said, you're going to helicopter pilot whether you want to or not. And apparently they weren't getting enough, so they came down to the situation where, well, let's go to the pilot training bases and see what we can find there. And they made a decision to have approach the people asking for volunteers when they're halfway through pilot training. We had just finished the T-37, which was the initial jet trainer. And as it turned out, we had 8 people that volunteered out of our group. I think we were the first place that they approached. And they got 8 volunteers. So they took us up and took us out to Shepherd Air Force Base. And I'm taking you up through the whole process to get to Vietnam. And they sent us through combat crew training up in Washington State, Fairchild Air Force Base. We had to go through POW training there. We had to go out in the wilderness for several days and start at one point, evade, and get to another point about 8-10 miles away. As it turned out, the winter time, and we're going to Vietnam. Who knows? But anyway, we went through there. I do know coming out of there, I was eating about 5 meals a day trying to catch up with my energy, because we did not have much in the way of food during the POW and evasion training there. From there, they sent 6 of us over to Clark Air Force Base, where they had the jungle survival. As compared to the combat crew, it was much nicer in that all we had to do was trek through a jungle. And it was not what you see on the old Tarzan movies for some of us that can remember that. It was very silent, but they did teach us where to get the water, a little bit of food, and how to create a shelter above ground. They said, don't sleep on the ground. And from there, we went again, another little escape and invasion. They took us up in the hills to the primitive tribes, the people about 4 foot tall, really good shape for ladies, etc. And they hired them to find us guys after we had a chance to hide. And they found me. Something was crawling on. I was in the weeds, etc., in the foliage. Something was going across my leg, and I'm scared of snakes, so I flipped on my light real quick and saw just a great big rat. But about 15 minutes later, a little tap and turned my light on. I was caught. And then they would get a little chit. and for that shift, they got 1 pound of rice. And I think we had at least 100 to 150 people out there. So they had so much rice, it was a game to them. They had so much rice, they didn't know what to do with it. Then they trucked us back to Clark Air Force Base, where we had a friend of mine and I caught our flight over to Korat Air Base over in Thailand, where we had a chance to get a little bit of operational experience. And while I was there about 4 or 5 weeks, then the need for a pilot came down needed in Vietnam. My buddy was married, so I said, I'll do it. And from there, we went to Detachment 10, which you see up here. It was a fairly newly constructed base. It was a Vietnamese base. Not much to do. On the base, they had 2 Air Force attachments, us being with about 40, 45 people. And they had a forward air controller. These were the Air Force pilots who would fly the small Cessna Piper type aircraft around the country looking for any enemy activities. And then they would direct flights into it. Next. This is Vietnam here. I was up in the middle part about here in Korat, Thailand, and I was reassigned down this area at Bin Tui Air Force Base down in the Delta. That was the area of our operations. Okay, this is an aerial view of where we were at. This was, I'm not sure where and when this was taken, but I do not remember that many huts down there. Okay, I was back there in July of this year, and this is the location of my base today. It's the international airport, so I didn't get to wander around very much up there. It's quite a change in the 58 years since I was there. Okay, this is the helicopter alert. We'll be standing ready for anything. Now, this was mostly a helicopter pilot. Helicopter base for the Vietnamese. We did not have much fixed-wing traffic, but we were on alert here. We did that in case something did happen, and there was a few occasions that aircraft diverted there that had battle damage, etc. Never had any crashes or anything like that, but that was what we did. But our primary mission was anything outside of the base, and that's where we call that ACR, Air Crew Recovery. But we were, back in those days, our communications to Saigon was almost nothing. So anything came up, we would do the mission, and then we would tell the headquarters what we had done. We didn't ask permission, we just did it. I'll go through a few pictures of, this is just back from the mission. So one of our guys took a picture. The detachment commander on the right, myself in the center, and our flight engineer on the left. Okay, the base was new. This is our alert facility, I guess you call it. And it was one of the few places that had some air conditioning over there. And our guys spent a lot of time down there because there's really nothing else to do on the base. It's just another view with the sandbags up in front. And this is the interior. A lot of time just sitting there waiting for something to happen and nothing happening. So you see some of our people there. Another picture, another. Okay, this is one of our pilots. There was a pet snake we had on the base. Of course, we were challenged to wrap it around her neck, etc. I did not meet the challenge. But what you see in the background is the places that we stayed. It's each doorway had a room that was about 12 by 20 feet. And it was split in half. And there's 2 people each section there. We had a cot, and we had a middle cabinet that would locker that we put things in. And I think we had a writing surface. That's all we had in there. The bathrooms, showers, etc. was somewhere back over here. Okay. And what you see on the left here was the bunker in case of a mortar attack. Of course, we traditionally some barbecuing we did there. And like I said, our guys just spend a lot of time down around the unit. And of course, the card games they would have at night. This is another view of the helicopter. This after some number of mortar attacks, they decided they should build a revetment to sort of keep our helicopters a little bit safer. This is the commander of the air rescue came in and awarded some of our guys some awards that they had earned. This is just one of the, it's a Vietnamese base. This is one of the towers that they would watch over and protect us. And of course, this was the Vietnamese. Just so happens in the Tet New Year, which is in January, they really celebrated. We understand they fired off all the ammunitions into the earth. So we weren't protected for a few hours. Next. Okay, this was the forward air controller group here, the other unit. This is O2 aircraft, which had the propeller in the front and back. And then that was a more modern. And the second one you see back was the older style. And they weren't very safe in the air there. They could easily be brought down. Okay, next. This was my first mission when I got there. We had to fly out into the South China Sea, which is probably about 100 miles out, and we had a sailor that had appendicitis and they couldn't deal with anything. A P-2 Navy patrol aircraft, fixed wing, escort us, flew out with us, make sure that we could find the ship. So this was just a picture of the ship as we were coming in to approach it. We hovered over it and used a hoist, dropped down a Stokes litter, which was basically a litter, and got the sailor out. We took him to the Army hospital back in Vietnam. Of course, then refueled and returned to our base. Well, one of the missions that we had there was in the Delta was a lot of water, rivers, tributaries, clones, etc., like that. Brown water Navy were the actual Navy people who worked in these rivers, and they were just referred to as brown water Navy people. And we were training with them because when they would be patrolling up these narrow things, they were frequently ambushed. And when they were, we wanted to know how best to get in and get them off those little boats. They were about the size of a cabin cruiser with some guns, etc. This is just a picture of, I was on the other boat and I took a picture of one of the helicopters working with and hovering over one of the boats practicing rescue. They're not, these are old slides, so they're not, that were taken, or so I moved it over to digital many years ago. Just another picture of the helicopter coming into there. Here we are dropping the Stokes litter down. You can see the flight engineer operating that, and the pilot there being directed by the flight engineer of how to move with their helicopter forward, backwards, left, right, whatever, until they got the patient back on board. And this is just another view as it was coming in. Okay, next. We had occasionally, we had mortar attacks occasionally until we brought in one of the Army helicopters that, Army helicopters, gunships that would patrol the area. And as far as I know, the mortar attacks stopped while I was there. But this is a flight line we have right now. This, what you're seeing here is the Vietnamese H-34 helicopters. Some of our Air Force people were there as advisors. And basically, to the right there, you see some of the forward air controller aircraft. This is some of the damage after one of the attacks. All the helicopters on the base was destroyed or severely damaged. This was just a picture of one of the areas that was hit by the mortar coming in. Of course, the people were in the bunker, so we didn't have any casualty there. And of course, this is where one of the hangars was wiped out, and our people there. And being the junior officer, being a second lieutenant, and everyone else was about 5 years older than me, or captains and majors. Any additional duties came down, like administrative officer, supply officer, any job the other guys didn't want, I got. I had a little office type thing. As you see, it was up on the second floor of a storage building. And this is the shrapnel that came through the little refrigerator that was there. And this is damage to just one picture of both of our helicopters was severely damaged. We kept them. It took about 3-4 weeks for them to get the parts in and get them repaired. So during the interim, they sent us a third aircraft to use while our aircraft were being repaired. I mean, our guys did a super job of getting it done as fast as they could. One of the cases there, I had my helmet in the helicopter ready for any mission. And it had about an 8-inch piece of shrapnel that had actually ended up in my helmet. Fortunately, my head wasn't in it. Okay. These are just a few other pictures of the local area I took on the rare occasion I was to get off. In this case, it was the entrance to the Tan Son Nhut Air Base in Saigon. Not the base I was at. As you see, there's tons of water out there. I'll quickly go through these things here. This is our 2 medical doctors that was assigned to the base. I went downtown to them. You see the town in the background here. And again, some of the places they lived in, some of the conditions that you can see. I really don't remember what this picture was about, but I think it was in our area. This is an aerial view of the area. This particular area right here, about right there, we found when I came back in July. It has an excellent restaurant, but this is just a view of one of the little riverways coming into the Mekong Delta. Again, some of the conditions that live there. Here, you see people in their boats. They use those for surviving. Some people, a number of people actually lived on these little, I'll call them sampans. You'll see pictures of the kind of the open air markets. I didn't really get into town, so I don't know that they had anything like a grocery store there. More of that. This is just a picture, and if you can tell, I took to get a group of the Army helicopters in a formation up there. And they were flying through there. And again, rice paddies and stuff like that, tons and tons of water. And again, market. And water. Okay, this is a picture of Canto, the little town we were near. I took these in July. Back when I was there 58 years ago, if they had any transportation, it was a bicycle. Today, I'll put all the 2-wheelers down as the mopeds. And if you see along there, you see every couple of feet there is a moped. And that's all, they have millions of mopeds there. And cars and trucks, etc., but not near. Just a couple pictures of the stores that are there now. The moped, go ahead. And this was the picture of the restaurant I mentioned a moment ago with 2 of the wait staff. We did have a little bit of distractions occasionally. Jonathan Winters, for those old enough, he was a comedian back in the olden days, I guess you call it. He came in with a group of young ladies, beautiful young ladies from our standpoint, They did it. They were there about 2.5 hours. They did a show for us, and the people, Army and Navy that was in the surrounding area would join us for this particular situation. And just a few pictures of the people, our crews, and of course we had to help the ladies in and out of the helicopter there. And if there's any well-known people that became well-known, I didn't know that. I had to run back to Korat, Thailand, to change my status from temporary in Vietnam to permanent. I had to pick up a few things. But so happened Bob Hope was there the 2 or 3 days I was there. And you see here is Bob Hope. Of course, you can't tell who that is, and for many people, that's Phyllis Diller on the right. And that was quite a interesting little program. And then the next picture is just some dancers, young ladies dancing for the GIs. It's quite a crowd there. And it's just another picture of one of the ladies. So happened that the Premier, Nguyen Van Ky, had been the chief of the Vietnamese Air Force, and he became Premier. But Vinh Thuy was his base, and on rare occasions he would bring some entertainment, in this case some Vietnamese dancers, in to entertain the people. Now this is a thing that's a little bit more interesting from my standpoint. These were the missions that we did off base, and I tried to get here to get a list. But when we did fly, okay, this area here was our area of operation. One of the missions there was not any big deal, but we had F-100 fighter that got shot up quite a bit, but the pilot was able to get over to the Gulf of Siam, so we just had to come out here and find him and pick him up and get him home. Answering part, he was a major at that time, and the other pilot, one of the pilots I flew with, met him some years later, and he'd gone from major up to a major general, which I think was 2 or 3 stars.
Major,
I've been
that's 3.
3 stars. Okay. So it was interesting.
Girl.
I'm sorry.
Be my little girl.
Okay. But when we took off, even on a training flight, we went as a crew ready to go off there. And one time, one of the forward air controllers noticed something. He caught something out of his eye. He went over to investigate it. It turned out to be a Army H-47 helicopter that apparently fallen out of the sky. We diverted from our training mission, went out to there, and of course there was no survivors. But while we were there, our pararescue man jumped off and checked everything out. And I did forget, our pararescue guy was the Air Force version of the Navy SEALs, only he was also a medic, trained as a medic. But he double-checked everything. But the forward air controller told us that there was a group of armed people about a quarter mile away. And we decided to, because of the crash site, the bodies and equipment on board, we decided to try to do something. So we have no guns or anything like that, no weapons on the helicopter. But we go up there and do what they call a firing pass. And a helicopter that it wasn't a Huey type aircraft, so they didn't know what was going on. So they all scattered, hit the ground, etc. But no problem. But when we came back in, and the thing about doing a second pass, we started hearing that, and we realized the guys, they were up there shooting at us then, so we deviated. But the fact told us that we had discouraged enough that they were retreating. So there was time for the Army to get their rapid deployment force out there to take over the area. We had a number of night missions, and unfortunately, I can remember flying through like a fireworks display without all the explosions, the traces, etc. But I cannot remember any missions that ended up during that time frame. But it was interesting to go through that situation. Now, unfortunately, we did have some unsuccessful missions. The Navy had one of their Hueys down the river that was stationed on a barge type thing. They would take off, and they went over backwards into the river. And later, they called us in to do a search, as it turned out to be at night. So we landed on the barge and got a briefing on what had happened. So we went about 10 miles down river, and this was at night. And of course, to search, we had to turn on our searchlights and be flying. Slowly flying, and of course, on either side, we have all the foliage there. And fortunately, the Viet Cong, et cetera, wasn't aware of it, and they weren't out. They didn't do anything, but it was a little bit nerve-wracking. So, what's going to happen next? But whenever we did have a system like this, we would get the initial notification. Daytime, we'd be airborne about 3 minutes. And at night, we'd be in our quarters. We'd launch there. We'd be airborne within 25, 30 minutes. Just another night mission. We were launched out of our quarters. We took off. It was during the monsoon season. Shortly after we took off, we got into very heavy monsoon rain, etc. And fortunately, we were over the little town of Canto, and they had a tower with a red light on it. But at this time, our lighting system shorted out, so we were flying in the dark. No. All we had was a red light to orbit around because we had no lights on our instruments until our flight engineer had a flashlight out and found that a circuit breaker had blown, so got back on. And a little bit hairy there for a little bit because you're just flying in the black around a red light. We were up 300 or 400 feet though. And then we were able to proceed on. We would track in on the radio for the people that was down. And it was rough, but there's a few tracers shot at it from a distance. Of course, they would be doing sound shots because they couldn't see us. But we went in and tracked down as we went in. Turned a floodlight on, just as we reached near the ground, and we saw a figure running towards us, so we picked him up, stuffed in, and we moved back and went to the Army place in Canto. And while there, the Armstrong with the detached commander, he said, keep it running. And he wanted to debrief the recovery guys because there's still one other person out there. But while he was gone, there's something happening in my control, so I shut it down. And did I ever catch the devil from the commander there? However, our flight engineer, checking everything out, he said one of our blades was beginning to come apart, so the commander sort of forgave me then, okay, because we were grounded. But probably timing is out of time.
What time? You're good. You've got a good 10 more minutes.
Okay. Pardon me, I don't see, well, I'll have to get this here. Oh, yes. No, I was not on this mission, but there's two B-52s that crashed that had midair over the South China Sea. Back up one. Anyway, we launched when we learned about it, and went out and searched. They had a mid-air collision during the mission. I have no reason why they had mid-air, but there was a total of 7 survivors who was able to eject from those two things. We got there, we found one person. Of course, the other 6 were recovered by other people. And we took him to the hospital and got him back. Let's see, of course, we had to refill on this line. Let's see. And one time I was standing outside the alert facility watching a Vietnamese helicopter formation, about a mile, just watching them, and I saw two collide, and they were about 700-800 feet. Anyway, they came together. Of course, that was the end of it. They were falling out of the sky, and our crews were launching before they hit the surface. And we got out there, we're searching. And again, this one of the situations, there were no survivors, and no, but we were there really quickly. But there's a lot of other missions. I wish I had taken more notes, etc., and because my memory after all these years have failed in many options. But we did have quite a few Army helicopters. We would go out and pull their crews out. It would range from they would get out of the hot zone, get out, land, and we'd be able to actually land, pick the crew up, and I'm not sure what the Army did with the helicopter after that. A few occasions we got into a little bit hotter area. At that time, we were fortunate enough to have Army gunships, and they were very impressive because as we would be going in, they'd be ahead of us. They'd be doing kind of a circle like that, suppressing fire, etc., and we could get in and get out. And no, I was extremely fortunate. I never got any holes in my airplane, but it was finished. Next. Oh, these are just a few of the information that I pulled off the internet about aircraft losses. You can see there's quite a few fixed-wing aircraft. It gives a lot of opportunity to find combat rescues. And a lot of helicopters. You can see, I think it's 5,700, something like that. And the bottom half, this is during the entire time of Vietnam. And when I was there, we were just beginning to get the H-3s in here, and then later they brought in the H-53s. But you can see, these were the people who would be going into North Vietnam, pull up the crew members who shot down out of that area. But they had some pretty good losses. Next. I believe this is one we have. Unfortunately, we lost 71 air rescue in action. We lost 45 aircraft, helicopters. And of course, the motto of the air rescue is that these things we do that others may live. And I think we, in many cases, lived up to that. Okay, I'm finished with Vietnam. I'm on an airplane. I'm taking off, okay? I take this picture. I was taken off from Tan Air Force Base in Saigon. This is a picture of that area of Saigon. And I didn't think I'd be going back, but next. In July, when I was there, they had a building which had an observation tower on the 59th floor. And I decided to take some pictures of the Vietnam, of Saigon, or Ho Chi Minh City, as they call it today. This is one of the pictures there. Next. This one. And next. Anyway, it looks much more modern, but a lot of things has improved over there. It's a communist country. I didn't really observe any problem with that. The people were very nice. The country is beautiful. And I think I probably bored you far enough right now. So I will say thank you for having me come, and we'll go from there. Kill that.
We are getting ready for our second presentation. So I'd like to introduce John Seitz. John has been a Civil War reenactor for 30 years and is a member of the 150th Pennsylvania Volunteer Infantry, better known as the Bucktails. So he portrays a private in Company C&K, which was Lincoln's Guard, And some of you probably are familiar with John and his wife Cinda, who's in the back, dressed in her hoops today. So he's going to talk to you about the Civil War and Lincoln and the Bucktails. So please help me welcome John Seitz.
I probably should have added to that I was drafted in 71 and ended up in Fort Hood, Texas from 72 to 73. And when my drill sergeant told me that I was going to be in the military police, I said, oh no. And I said, I'll never make it through Fort Gordon, Georgia. He said, no, you're going for on-the-job training. So that was fun. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Civil War, mostly the Bucktails. Closer. I'll just hold it. There we go.
There you go, John.
Now, I've never gave this program before, even though I've been with the Bucktails 30 years. Only in the last couple days I started, I better start doing some more research, because basically I speak to 5th and 6th graders, so you got to keep it short. And so, but as we know, the war could have started on January 9th, 1861, when the Star of the West was heading toward Fort Sumter, and the Confederates did fire on it. So the ship did turn around and leave, and so the war did not start because technically they did not shell American property. It was just a ship. But the war did begin on Friday, April 12th, 1861 at 4:30 in the morning when they fired on Fort Sumter. That basically started the war. We know the war ended on Sunday, April 9th, 1865 at 4 o'clock in the afternoon at Appomattox Courthouse, Virginia, when the surrender papers were signed. Now, there is two interesting stories, we might say, with the beginning of the war and the end of the war. There was a guy named Wilbur McLean. He had a house at what was first battle would be the First Battle of Bull Run. Cannonball came down his chimney and basically destroyed his farmhouse. He said, I got to move somewhere safer. So he went to Appomattox Courthouse, and they happened to sign the surrender papers in his house. And now he still had his house, but I don't think there's anything left in the parlor when they left, because I think they even took the curtains for souvenirs. Now, another item, a little bit sadder. I'm a firm believer that was Edmund Ruffin that yanked the lanyard that sent the first cannonball toward Fort Sumter. And so you could say he fired the first shot in anger in the Civil War. But he also probably fired the last shot in anger in the Civil War. On June 17th, 1865, he writes in his diary, and now what will be near my last breath, I hereby repeat my unmitigated hatred to Yankee rule, to all political and malignant and vile Yankee race. He then shot himself. And the sad thing is, history keeps repeating itself, even today. Now, 5 days later, Pennsylvania basically responds. And on April 14th, 1861, a guy named Thomas Kane, a prominent PA man, an abolitionist, wrote a letter to Governor Curtin offering to raise a company of horsemen. But the governor replied, we need infantry. Now, as they go on, some of these stories, who knows if they're true or not. Depends who writes them. And you hear a whole bunch of other things that goes on. But Kane proceeded to Smethport, and recruiting effort began, and he was calling out volunteer rifles, and he was after marksmen. He then proceeded to Elk, Cameron, and started raising men, and he got, they said, hundreds. And so the recruiting only took a couple of days, but while at Smethport, opposite the courthouse where Kane had his headquarters, was a butcher shop. What's the guy's name here? James, if I can pronounce his name right, Langrigan, noticed a deer hide hanging with the butcher shop, so he went over, cut the tail off, stuck it on his hat. Went back to headquarters. Kane saw it, loved it, and other recruits went back and skunned the deer out, and they cut the hide into triangular pieces. And Kane said, from now on, we are going to be called the Bucktails. And that's basically how the Bucktails got started. These men were, the interesting thing is, these guys, when they left the area, they actually rafted down the Allegheny and then headed off toward Harrisburg, probably to Camp Curtin. don't know if this is going out or not. Oh, there it is. Now, these men were unique, especially because they were mountain men. And so they were very familiar with muskets, which is very unusual in the Army back then. And so they were initially issued Sharps rifles, which was usually only went to the sharpshooters. And so they were basically classified as a sharpshooter regiment of the Reserve Corps. On September 17th, 1862, the original Bucktails, as I would call them, were involved in the Battle of Antietam, or as the Confederates call it, Sharpsburg. A lot of times the Union would name battles after a landmark, and the Confederates would pick a town. During the Battle of the Cornfield in the East Woods, they took extremely heavy casualties. Roughly close to 110 dead and wounded, and 93 were actually casualties in one charge alone. So after that battle was over, the military camped along the James River, and a Colonel McNeil of the regiment wrote a letter to the governor of Pennsylvania requesting permission for Major Roy Stone and Captain Langhorne Wister to return to PA to raise men to help reduce the depleted ranks, basically due to that battle. He also suggested raising a Bucktail Brigade, and so that's how basically we came into existence. So in part of the letter that was written, he said, "Where the Bucktails fought, there was no giving way of our lines. And where the major would bring up his Spartan band, their brigades would reform and hold their positions. The name of Bucktail became a terror to the enemy, and more extended organization would be greatly advantageous to the service." So basically, recruiting began in the state. Roy Stone returned to his counties. Wister returned to his home city of Philadelphia. And Stone, the men he raised, eventually became the 149th Bucktails. Excuse me, there was also a 143rd, but they didn't wear deer tails as far as I know. At the same time, Henry Heidi Cooper received a commission as captain in the Army, and he too began a recruiting effort in his home county of Crawford County, right here in Meadville, just a little bit up the road. Now, the poster that went out right away was basically stated, "Bucktail Brigade, 600,000 men called out. Drafting commences August 15th. H.S. Heidi Cooper has been authorized by General Stone to raise a battalion of 4 companies for the Bucktails. All companies, parts of companies, and recruits reporting immediately at Meadville will be provided for, and be sure a place in the Bucktail Brigade. In this now, and receive a bounty of $25. Now, I did look that up. It said spending power, so you don't know if the computer tells you the truth. That would be equivalent of $800 today, which was a wonderful amount, especially when you realize what else they were getting. He also made mention that they would get 1 month's pay in advance, which I'm not sure what it was then, but roughly it was about, the beginning of the war, $13 a month. $75 at the end of the war, and wait not to be drafted into a poorer regiment and receive no bounty. Basically, you did not want to be in the regulars. If you were going to go, you enlisted in a volunteer infantry, because basically you knew everybody in your company, aunts, not aunts, uncles, brothers, friends. You elect your officers, you knew your sergeants and corporals, so it was the way to go. The county will probably give her men $50 apiece. I've never looked it up to see if Crawford County did give them $50. H.S. Heidi Cooper wished 100 men to form a select company. The battalion will probably receive its arms, etc., immediately and be encamped in Meadville for 4 weeks. All men enlisting in the battalion will be sure of the best care and can have money at all times transferred to their families free of charge. Meadville, Pennsylvania, August 6, 1862. Interesting thing is, it only took 21 days, and they got all the men that they needed. So then a flyer went out, and it basically said, "Bucktails, all men who have enlisted in the Heidi Cooper and Derrickson Company, Rice-Singer and Shaw's Company, J.B. Fay's Company, or Captain Ziegler's Company must report themselves at Meadville on Monday, September 1st, to be readiness to leave immediately for Harrisburg, August 27, 1862. Now, the companies that were formed in the 150th were Company A and B from Philadelphia County, C from Crawford, D from Union County, Companies E, F from Philadelphia, Company G from McCain County, and Companies H, I, and K from Crawford County. Then from Meeville, they took a train and went to Harrisburg, Camp Curtin. And there on the 4th of September, the regiment was formed under the following officers. Langhorne Wisser from Philadelphia be colonel. H.S. Heidi Cooper of Crawford County, lieutenant colonel. And Thomas Chamberlain of Union County, major. And so from there, on September 5th, 1862, their orders were to go to Washington, D.C. They boarded the train and off they went to begin their life in the military, which they thought was going to be short, but it wasn't. As they transferred trains in Baltimore, while walking the streets, they were all reminded of the unpatriotic attacks that were made upon the previous year against traveling soldiers. The air was much more patriotic now, and the receptions was with cheers rather than jeers. Again, history kind of repeats itself when you think about what happened during the Vietnam War. And excuse me if I cough a little bit, my allergies are terrible right now. Now, the regiment received orders to report to the Meridian Hill and establish their camp. The command was quickly dispersed throughout Washington, because basically what they would do, they would be guarding warehouses, train depots, and the bridges coming into the city, because the Confederates were on the other side. And so they were that close. Companies C and H were ordered to the soldiers' home where President Lincoln and his family were staying to relieve some of the regulars that were on duty. Now, either by mistake or didn't know where they were going, they ended up going to the Soldiers' Rest, which was near one of the train depots. And so now the president was unguarded, and they said, some reports said, oh, an aide just came to the 150th camp, but you could tell they were panicking because there's nobody there. And so the aide showed up, and so companies D and K were promptly started for the soldiers' home. Now, the interesting thing is, that is the one thing that Company K is known for as they go on, so pay attention. Companies D and K pitched their tents near the grounds of the home and in full view of all the buildings. And for a number of years, we used to reenact that. We would camp on the same grounds right in front of Lincoln's cottage in Washington, so that was kind of, it was fun. Their special duty was to guard the premises and look after the safety of the president, whose life was off and on in danger. And you have to understand, the president back then, he would ride horseback from the cottage to Washington. It was about 2 miles away, unescorted. He would walk the streets even up to the end, sometimes definitely unescorted. Now, one of the visitors to camp was Thomas Lincoln, or Tad, and he basically seemed to say he owned the camp, so he was always there. And I don't know if it's a photograph or a drawing, but we do know there is some image of Tad dressed as a bucktail. On the morning of the first day, Captain Dickerson of Company K was invited to breakfast with the president. After that, he rode with him to the White House. The carriage was escorted by, and this is a quote by somebody, an insignificant detail of cavalry from Scott's 900, and they returned that evening. Now, they do have a little slightly derogatory term for that same unit, so I'm not sure what was going on there. Now, supposing that invitation for breakfast was just merely a complimentary introduction to his duty, Captain Derrickson did not report the following morning until the president was ready to start. In the course of the day, the captain was summoned to the mansion and was requested to breakfast daily with the president, which he continued to do so until the family went back to the White House in the fall. According to the captain, he had made a practice to enter the president's room a little after 6 in the morning. The president would eat before the family because he had a lot on his mind, and usually found him engaged in reading either the scriptures or some work of art, and the captain would spend the night in the cottage also. So Lincoln was taking a shine to the 150th Company K. Now, during this time, President Lincoln was the first president to visit an active battlefield, which happened in July 1864 at Fort Stevens in Washington, D.C., during which the Confederates were engaged in an assault on the city. And Lincoln was on one of the parapets of the fort when a sharpshooter decided to target Lincoln. And they said there was a surgeon on his right that got a little distance, got hit. I don't know if it was a surgeon or one of the Bucktails, but the person right next to Lincoln got hit, from what I understand, hit in the leg. So that's how close Lincoln was to snipers. And while I'm on my mind, how good some of these snipers are, the Confederacy also had their sharpshooters, and some of these were actually imported musket rifles from England. One was a Wentworth musket. One report says the Confederacy paid $1,000 in gold for one rifle and 1,000 rounds of ammunition, and a cheaper version came out. So this is a Wentworth round. It's a .45 caliber. We do know from records that a sniper at Spotsylvania Courthouse killed General John Sedgwick at 800 yards with a gun like that. Yeah, it was really a perfect shot. So some of those guns were quite accurate, but very expensive back then. When you think a Springfield might have cost, I think it was about $23 back then. When the 150th was ordered to leave Washington, President Lincoln wanted Company K to stay. One of the times we were at the soldiers' home, the organization that runs it actually brought the letter out so we could see it, which was nice. The letter states, Executive Mansion, Washington, November 1st, 1862, to whom it may concern. Captain Dickinson and his company have been with me for some time, keeping guard at my residence, now at the Soldiers' Retreat. He and his company have been very agreeable to me, and while it's deemed proper for any guard to remain, none would be more satisfactory to me than Captain D and his company. Signed, A. Lincoln. And so when the 150th left, Company K stayed, and they became his official bodyguards until the day he was assassinated. Only problem is, he left the Bucktails at their camp. Didn't take nobody with him. But even if they did, John Wilkes Booth may still have gotten through because he was a famous actor. And if he went to see the president may have said okay. Now, another thing my understanding is General Grant was supposed to be there, but for some reason, I don't know if it was the missus or not, but he didn't show up. Now, if Grant would have been there, nobody would have got in. So who knows? History would have changed if Grant would have showed up. Okay. From there, the Bucktails went off to a couple smaller engagements, but eventually ended up in Chancellorsville. And on February 1863, they left Washington with the 149th, the 143rd, which were part of the 2nd Brigade, 3rd Division, 1st Corps. May 2nd, they were not much engaged, but basically stayed in the area of Chancellorsville until June when they marched off toward Gettysburg. Interesting, there's always interesting stories. Now, we don't know if this was the Bucktails or not, but the Bucktails did mention that it hadn't rained since May, and it was hot. And as they were marching toward the north, they did mention that there was puddles along the way, and that the horses were refusing to drink from. And they even mentioned that there was dead horses and mules by these puddles. And some of the soldiers decided to drink the water anyway because that's how bad it was. And they said simply, they regretted it. So back then, if you got diarrhea really bad, you did die. Now, Gettysburg. General Meade was now in charge of the Union Army. The Confederates under Heath and Pender's division under A.B. Hill's corps were also coming into Gettysburg at this time from the west. The 150th came onto the battle near Gettysburg at about 11 o'clock in the morning on July 1st, 1863. They were on one of the main roads, but they diverted them and they started cross country to get to what we know as McPherson's Ridge. They halted in front of the cemetery, and there they dropped their packs, because usually in battle, your backpacks are going to get in the way. And more than likely, they didn't retrieve them, so the Confederates probably got them all. They moved forward about a half a mile to a position behind a crest of a hill, and on their right, near a large barn. On their left was the Iron Brigade, and some will remember that's where General Reynolds was mortally wounded, and eventually he died. They found the ground was gently rolling, open, and the only shelter being a slight fence, which That fence has been reconstructed. So that fence is there. A little pond in front of the barns there. The only thing it's not is the McPherson's house. I'm not sure when that, but that disappeared quite a while ago. Now the enemy began showing their position, because you have to understand where the Bucktails were. There was high ground behind them, but they're slightly down in a valley. They would have continued further to what basically was Willoughby Run, but we call it today on the opposite side Hers Ridge, and that's where the Confederates were, and they did have the high ground, so they did have excellent positioning for cannon fire. So the enemy began shelling their positions. Now eventually here I'm going to switch to first person just to go from whoever wrote this at the time. They opened up a new battery on the 150th right flank and began enfilading fire. The right flank was exposed. Now the new Confederate Wentworth rifled cannon, which was from England, came into play. And it's my understanding that this cannon could fire a shot 2 to 3 miles if they could see their target. So it was a nasty cannon. But luckily, even though not for these guys, it disabled killed 2 and disabled 3 in Company C. They then switched their position to the barn to use the barn as shelter. But now the 150th was alone on McPherson's Ridge. Now the 149th and 143rd were now established along a dugout road, which today that's Route 30. And so they're kind of along our right flank up Route 30 a little bit. And I think, even though it didn't mention it, they were over by the railroad cut also. So they were forming a right angle basically to the 150th, which now fronted westward. So now they're facing toward McPherson's Hers Ridge, I should say. The enemy continued shelling our position to about 2 in the afternoon, without, however, disabling more than 10 or 12 men. But losing 10 or 12 men is still a lot. Company B, Captain Jones, which had been sent forward as skirmishers, was meanwhile actively engaged in our front, sustaining considerable loss. At this time, Colonel Stone, commanding the regiment, having gone forward to reconnoiter, was hit in the hip and the arm by 2 balls from the enemy skirmishers and was carried off the field to the barn. Colonel Whistler then assumed command of the brigade, and Lieutenant Colonel Heidi Cooper the regiment. Now, I'm going to be getting to the flags in a couple minutes here, but I'm not sure which, there was a command given, but I'm not sure exactly when it was given. But soon a strong force of rebel infantry advanced from the north on our right, and we were then charged front forwards so as to come in line with the other regiments of the brigade. This movement was rapidly accomplished, though through heavy fire. The enemy was now within 50 yards, and when you understand that they're just standing there looking at each other, firing at 50 yards apart, hard to imagine. But the 150th said they assumed staggered by our fire, and they halted and started to retreat, but then a new line of rebels was seen approaching from the west against our left at a distance of a half a mile. And Colonel Wister ordered a charge. I'm going to go into the 149th for a little bit, but that charge I think is important because our 150th Bucktails flag has a very interesting story. This movement was entirely successful. The enemy, who had suffered terribly from our fire, gave way and at once fled in confusion. Danger of injuring their own troops now being removed, the rebel batteries opened up upon us with terrible effect, and the infantry fire from the line advancing upon our left became very severe. In view of this, Colonel Whistler gave orders to change fronts to the rear, which basically was about face, and they basically had headed back to their original position, what's up by the barn. So during this time, they're down closer to Willoughby Run. This movement was successful, but with a terrible loss. Now, during this time, the colors of the 150th had been placed a little distance to draw the enemy's fire, and had been captured by them during that initial attack that the rebels did. But a company of the 150th countered, and they actually got the flag back for the 149th. The 149th then reinforced us on our new line, and we were in position none too soon as the advancing lines of the rebels were soon upon us. Our men were partially sheltered by a port and rail fence, and you see a port and rail fence. It's not much of a shelter, but I guess if it stops a musket ball, it's better than nothing. After retreating a short distance, they moved off to their right flank and fixed themselves in a thick woods in front of the Iron Brigade. Colonel Whistler was wounded in the face during this encounter, but he did not leave the field. He eventually had to because of the loss of blood, and I think they said his face and neck were starting to swell up. Now, no charge was made this time. This is roughly about 2:45 in the afternoon. But the artillery from the Confederates kept up, but there was no charge there for a while. During this time, Colonel Heidi Cooper was severely wounded in the arm, which had since been amputated, but this time he's still on the field. He also was hit, I think, in the leg also. But he was treated slightly in the barn, but we do know he actually supposedly took a strap off his horse, tied his arm back into place, and continued giving orders till the loss of blood was too much for him and he had to be evacuated. Now, Adjutant Ashurst was wounded in the shoulder. Lieutenant Perkins in the thigh. Lieutenant Chancellor had his leg almost torn off by solid shot. Now, the flag of the 150th is perhaps one of the most interesting stories out there when you understand what was going on. Sometime during the battle, Company D, which was the color company, was ordered forward to encourage the men. But you have to understand, if the 150th is there, the entire company had about 900 men. They're probably facing 900 men. When the flag goes forward, the enemy's 900 men now aim at the flag and the people carrying it. When those soldiers were given the order, they knew one thing was going to happen. They were going to die, but they did it anyway. When they began to charge forward, problem is all the Confederate musketry is now faced at them. Color Sergeant Samuel Pfeiffer was shot dead while carrying the state color. And the thing is, he didn't go down immediately dead. According to report, he lay there waving the flag in defiance at the Confederates. Now, there's two conflicting stories here, and I think they try to base it where Confederate General A.P. Hill was stationed, so it could have been the 149th color bearer or maybe the 150th color bearer, but it's still both color bearers were killed. He basically wrote, expressed such a regret at the death of so brave a man. Now, the sole surviving member of the Guard was Corporal Joseph, if I can pronounce his name, Guddius, or something like that. He seized the banner and was quickly wounded. He kept the flag. He did make it into town. He stopped at a house, and the house still exists. But the guy was shot and killed, and this was credited to a Lieutenant F.M. Harney of the 14th Carolina. Soon after, Harney was mortally wounded, and his dying request was that the captured color be presented in his name to President Jefferson Davis. Davis did accept the 150th flag from North Carolina Governor Vance, and Davis actually wrote what an honor it was to receive it, and he did keep that flag. And when he evacuated Richmond, one of the things he did do was pack that flag in his luggage. And when he was captured, dressed as a lady, they found our flag. Now, I guess it was given back to Pennsylvania in 1869 after urging the former Secretary of War, Cameron. So, but there is a little piece of it up in the Baldwin Reynolds because Colonel Heidi Cooper did take a chunk out, and so we still have a piece of it. Not long after 3 p.m., our whole line began to give way. Our brigade, however, had no further orders to retreat and continued to hold its ground for some time when finding ourselves almost surrounded by the enemy. We at last fell back slowly under a severe fire. The Iron Brigade had already fallen back sometime before ours and had formed a new line on the crest of the next ridge, midway between the seminary and the front. Here we halted again and withstood the enemy's attack for some time. But the line giving way on all sides, finding ourselves, basically the 150 was getting surrounded. And so during their retreat, they actually had to stop because part of their cannon battery was still trying to limber up, and they were trying to stop the Confederate advance. So the 150th did stop so they can get limbered up, get the horses on, and get the cannons the heck out of there. But the problem is now by the time they got back into Gettysburg, now they're completely surrounded, and a lot of the 150th did get captured at that time. After this, they arrived at the cemetery where it reformed, and they rested in the line during the night. Now, before this part, there's another interesting story about one of the residents of Gettysburg. The story goes, soon after taking up our line in the orchard, an old gentleman approached us from the direction of town, dressed in a blue swallowtail coat, high silk hat, rather worse for wear, carrying a musket, and asked if he could be allowed to fight with our company. And so the person answered, let's ask the colonel. And so the colonel asked, can you shoot? And he said, oh yes, said the old gentleman. Where are your cartridges? And he slapped his pantaloons and said, they're here. And so the colonel agreed, and he said, wish there was more people like you to fight. But he told the old guy to go into the woods where there's more protection, and he actually probably fought with the Iron Brigade. And history preserved the memory of old John Burns that fought with asked if he could fight. The story says that he fought heroically, and he was wounded in the side, the leg, and left insensible on the field. But somebody found him, he took him home, and as of this writing, he was 80 years old. And so, now on the second day, on the following day, which was the second day, they were held in reserve near Cemetery Hill. But at night, they and the 149th went out to rescue 2 pieces of artillery and 4 caissons, so they did rescue that and bring them back to the Union lines. It's even said that one of our pickets was talking to a wounded Confederate soldier from Florida, and his officers actually told him that you have to fight hard, not get wounded, because if Pennsylvania troops catch you, they are going to kill you. And the thing is, if you understand that, that still happens in war today, but from the enemy. So it's interesting that things do not change through time. Now the third day, the 150th was at Pickett's Charge, slightly east of the high water mark. The Union was under severe fire from artillery starting at basically around 1 p.m. under Confederate Colonel Edwin Alexander, which was a very young guy, but a brilliant artillerist. Basically opened up with up to maybe 75 cannon. The Union answered with about 180 cannon, and they did say that in Pittsburgh, it did sound like rolling thunder, that they could actually hear the cannon barrage. Now, the 150th was held in reserve when the enemy made their last attack. Some say they didn't, but according to a lot of what I've read, the 150th did contribute toward the end of Pickett's charge, but firing on the enemy. Now, one of the interesting things is when you understand, when I was a kid, lived in the eastern part of the state, we took a field trip to Gettysburg. There, I remember going into a store, which was probably today the future horse soldier, if you've ever been there. And I was amazed at the bins of bullets. But the 2 bins that I was impressed with, one bin had, I don't know how many, where 2 bullets had collided in the air. What really impressed me was the next bin over had 3 and 4 bullets that had collided in the air. And that's what these guys were walking into. It didn't matter if you're Union or Confederate. But you can consider the Confederates at Pickett's Charge, they came out at 1 mile. Artillery, now, set the stage a little bit. The Confederate artillery, I think, fired too many of their cannons at one time for effect, and most of their rounds went into the reserves. And so through the smoke, their commander thought they were hitting the front line, so they weren't. They actually didn't hit nothing. Well, except for the guys in the back. And so basically, if you can see your target at 1¼ miles, the artillerymen are going to hit it. One shot for effect, and even if you're walking, it might take them 3 shots, but almost on the second shot, they are going to hit you. And so as these guys came out of the woods, they opened up with long-range artillery. As they came across midway, somewhere around 600 yards, they would open up with short-range artillery, which would be solid round balls, exploding round balls. And just so you know, a British officer, I think in 1880-something, invented the exploding cannonball. His name lives on forever. His name was, I think, Henry Shrapnel. So, always love that story. And so they opened up with that, but the nasty stuff was canister. And when you see a lot of the relics, and some I'm going to go over with here if I have time, nasty stuff. And when you see what's on display, most of that probably was because of canister. And one shot, probably at 600 yards, if I put my arms like this, it's designed to take most of you out with one shot. And just imagine cannon after cannon after cannon firing canister, double canister, triple canister. And some of this canister has 72 ball bearings in one. And so when you think of Armistead, made it to the high water mark, tremendous act of bravery to know what his men went through. And it's sad he didn't survive, but he was mortally wounded. And the nice thing is, a friend of his on the Union Army side was with him. And so there's lots of stories like that. Now, during the battle, the regiment, which would be our four companies from Crawford County, went into battle with 17 officers and 400 men. 43 were killed, 138 wounded, and 69 taken prisoner. And so it was a hard day for the Bucktails. Colonel Henry Heidi Cooper did get the Medal of Honor for his leadership as lieutenant colonel, refusing to leave his regiment, even being wounded twice during the fight on McPherson's Ridge. J. Monroe Reisinger also got the Medal of Honor for his special bravery and meritorious conduct while serving as color corporal, defending the flag despite being wounded 3 times. And I think there's more to that story. I think he actually did some other things too. Now, I'm winding down. Other battles that the Bucktails were in was Pollock Mills, Chancellorsville, the Wilderness, Laurel Hill, Spotsylvania, North Anna, Bathsheba Church, People's Farm, Cold Harbor, Petersburg, Hatcher's Run, Weldon Railroad, Yellow House, Dabney's Mills, and they ended their service guarding prisoners in Elmira, New York, at the prison camp there. The battle created 51,000 casualties. They fired or lost both sides 7 million rounds of pistol and musket ammunition. On both sides, 55,000 rounds of artillery shells were fired or lost. The Union during this after the battle picked up of 12,000 muskets that they picked up, almost most of them had at least 2 rounds in them, and that's from panicking. One of them, I had to lay my musket out and start laying bullets up along it. They actually found one that had 23 rounds loaded in it, and that's the panic these guys are in. And you can imagine your ramrod keeps getting higher and higher and higher. You just imagine the fear or the panic that's in them, not even realizing your musket's not going off. Now, according to records, now some say, soldiers would say it would take the weight of a man in lead to hit one Confederate soldier. Another one wrote, it said 900 pounds of lead to hit one Confederate soldier. Now, the military wrote about 1,000 rounds to hit one Confederate soldier. But if you think about it, World War II, 45,000 rounds to kill one enemy. And they said 55,000 rounds to kill one during the Vietnam War. And so lots of ammunition gets spent. And if you think of the war, the Civil War, I'm going to round these off. Revolutionary War, 4,400 casualties. War of 1812, 2,200. Mexican War, 13,000, almost 300. Spanish-American War, 2,500. World War I, 116,500. World War II, 405,400. Korean War, 36,000, almost 600. Vietnam War, 58,200. Middle East, this is probably a low number, about 5,000 with a total of 6,400. 6,433, 950 casualties. Civil War updated a couple years ago, 750,000. And so, and the sad part is that was on our soil. Civilian losses, about 50,000, and that's probably southern cities that were under siege. And this is usually where the girls in classes go, oh. Horses and mules, 1 million to 1.4 million killed. Now, even though the war was over 160 years ago, some of the relics that I pick up, and I hated history growing up, but when you look at some of these relics, the stories they tell, and they're sad. One like this. It's a bayonet curved. Now, you have to imagine, if you're a soldier, it's a hot July day, you know what a deer looks like along a road that's dead. Your job is to remove bodies. Now, these could be used for taking hot pans off a campfire, but hooked to your musket, you can hook a strap and you can drag a body because you do not want to be anywhere near that thing. And so, sad stories with things like this. This is a set of scales. It would have been right here on the shoulder. Basically, early war, last part of, we'll call armor that the military wore. And basically to protect your shoulder from a sword blow. Whoever was wearing that got hit here. Probably from something exploded in the air. A wound like that, you do not survive. So who's ever wearing that was probably taken to an aid station, put up against a tree, given some water, somebody probably sat with him until he died. And that's the sad part of things like this. Or some people might look at these. 2 melted bullets, never fired. They are from the Battle of the Wilderness. One is a Union round, one is a Confederate round. And those who study history know that the artillery barrage started a major forest fire. Soldiers could not get out, especially the wounded. So whose ever ammunition pouches these were in, hopefully they got out. If not, soldiers did write about hearing their screams in the forest, and there's nothing they could do about it. And when you understand canister, the saddest relics you can find on the battlefield are these. These are wedding bands. And as you know, they do not come off that easily. And so chances are, and these are very common relics on the battlefield. The only way you lose something like this if you walk in the canister. At Gettysburg, soldiers wrote about pink clouds on the battlefield. That's what happens when you get close to a can of canister with 72 ball bearings in it. This is what's left. And that's what makes, it kind of brings, even though it's a past history, it brings it to life. Now, last thing I have, I think I wrote it down here somewhere. I hope I did. There it is. After the war, like I said, military records show that 1,000 rifle shots took to kill or hit one Confederate soldier. General Ambrose Burnside wrote, out of every 10 soldiers who are perfect in drill and manual of arms, only one knows the purpose of the front sight of a musket. They cannot hit the broadside of the barn at 100 yards. And that, he's talking about the 2 great big barn doors. So a call went out for an organization in an article in the Army and Navy Journal by 2 Union Army veterans, Colonel Church and George Wingate. Their primary motivation was concern over poor marksmanship absorbed among Union soldiers during the Civil War. Goals: to promote and encourage rifle shooting on a scientific basis, improve the shooting abilities and discipline of American civilians and the militia, believing better firearm training would benefit the military and the general population, and create a dedicated practice ground for marksmanship training. So on November 17th, 1871, with General Burnside as our first president, the NRA was formed. And so that was the National Riflemen's Association. And just to basically improve soldiers' shooting, and at the same time, Americans got to benefit from it. With that, thank you. Oh, I will say one of the things that I do like to carry with me, about 25 years ago, I bought from an auction, is somebody, I heard somebody mention this bayonet. It actually fits my musket better than my reproduction bayonet does. A soldier picked this up on the Battle of Gettysburg and brought it home to Massachusetts. And so a lot of soldiers do like to carry things from the past, so this is what I carry to honor the soldiers that when I do a reenactment.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Colleen Munn, and I'm with PA Stitchers of Valor, your local chapter of the National Quilts of Valor Foundation. Today, it's our honor to be here to recognize 15 veterans, possibly. We're still waiting on a couple, with their Quilts of Valor for recognition of their service. We want to thank the Through the Veterans Eyes program for inviting us back again this year. It's always a privilege to be here. They do a great program if you haven't been here all day like I have. They do a great program for our veterans. But before we do that, before we move forward, let's take time to recognize our veterans. So if you are a veteran, would you please stand? Thank you. Before you sit down, don't stand back up. I have a question for you. You know, I call all of you veterans to get your information to do these presentations. One time I called a veteran and I asked him what branch of the service he was in. He said the only branch there is. So, on the count of 3, I would like you to tell me which branch that was.
The Marine.
I didn't count. Some of you don't listen to directions. 1, 2, 3.
Marine.
Okay, that's what I thought. Just as confused as I was before. The gentleman was from the Marines, but somebody else corrected me and stated there is one branch of the service, and it's the armed services. Thank you all for your service. I appreciate every one of you. You may have a seat now. We took time to recognize our veterans, but there's somebody else, some people, other people that we need to recognize too, and I don't always do this, and it's been pointed out to me. There are people that when these veterans were shipped out or deployed, that they stayed home and ran the home front, raised their children, celebrated parties and Christmases without their veteran spouse or family members. If you are a caregiver, a spouse, somebody that stayed home while your veteran was deployed, would you please stand? Thank you. That's not always easy either. Quilts of Valor is a national foundation. It was started in 2003 by a grassroots quilter by the name of Catherine Roberts. Her son was deployed to Iraq. He was a gunner on top of a Humvee, and she was seconds away from a panic attack 24 hours a day. One night, she had a dream of a post-deployed warrior sitting on the edge of his bed, battling the demons of war, battling the things that he went through and saw and participated in. and he was struggling. Somebody came along and wrapped him in a quilt, and it brought healing and comfort to that veteran. And that's how Quilts of Valor got started. It was based on that information. Since 2003, we have awarded over 427,121 veterans and service members with their Quilts of Valor. And that was across the United States, Germany, Afghanistan, and Iraq. PA Stitchers of Valor got started in 2016 when I made my first 2 quilts and awarded them to my niece and her husband upon their retirement from the United States Navy. Shortly after, I was contacted after the presentation. All these quilts will get registered with the national organization. They will keep track of all of the veterans that have received a quilt. I registered my niece and nephew with the national organization after their presentation, and they contacted me. Said, we have a veteran in your area. Are you able to make an award, a quilt for them in your area? And I said, sure. Within 3 weeks, they contacted me with 3 different veterans needing a quilt. At that time, I was working a full-time and part-time job, and I said, I can't do it by myself, so I asked for help. I went to the Quilt Guild, Free Spirit Quilt Guild in Sagertown, presented the program, told them the requirements, told them the qualifications to make a quilt and what was needed, and we decided to do it for a service project in 2017. We joined National in April of 2017, and in May of 2017, we awarded our first 11 veterans with their quilts. After that, we have opened it up to other guilds, other people, other quilters, people that just want to help with the quilts. We've opened it up to whoever would like to help with them. Since we started in 2017, we have awarded 761 veterans in our area with Quilts of Valor. What that means is that we have honored 761 veterans in this area for their time and service with the United States Armed Forces. Notice I've said we've awarded these quilts. These are not charity quilts or something that we buy and hand out. These are all lovingly crafted by these ladies plus a few more. This is a small group of what we have, but they are here to award these quilts to our veterans. At this time, I'm going to ask Mr. Rich Antone to do the introductions of today's recipients. When he calls your name, will you please come forward and take a seat up front and look at the camera. The camera guy's in the red Armstrong shirt over there. He'll be drifting through here at some point so that we can get your picture. We're going to start on that side, work our way to the center, go down there and start there and work to our center. That way we can see how the progress is coming as we're going. We are going to take out those 2 that did not show, probably due to weather. They will still have a chance to receive their quilt. It's at another time. Rich?
All right. And thank you, Colleen, for inviting me back. Actually, my technical position is John Amato's backup. So I'm always here if he needs me to step in, and I'm honored to be here today. I'm semi-retired. I get into this debate of what's semi-retired. I was a full-time radio station program director plus an announcer. And that was a 7-day-a-week, 80-hour-a-week job. And it got kind of old a couple of years ago. So I decided to retire from all the management stuff and hang on to the radio show. I've been doing a morning radio show for over 40 years. I'm used to getting up at 4:30 in the morning with the dogs and get ready to go to work. So leaving that would be kind of weird. They say, oh, you'll get over it. You'll be able to sleep in till 6. No, they asked me to stay, and I'm more than happy to stay. Drinking coffee and playing classic rock songs in the morning and getting a paycheck, not too shabby. So I'm enjoying retirement quite nicely, thank you. Well, one thing I do on the show every morning is I have a segment called Voices for Vets. I am not a veteran, but I come from a family of veterans from all different, as far back as the First World War through Vietnam. And I consider myself as an advocate for our veterans. I have a microphone that I get to share some information from local veteran services organizations here in Crawford County with Tony DiGiacomo on Thursdays. Our friends from Post 2006, Rich Crancota and John Amato join me on Wednesdays. Venango County has your VSO, Harry Whittemore. And we also talk to the Erie Veteran Services Office on Monday mornings. And Kim Lingling, you all may know Kim. Kim was my first guest over 20 years ago when I started that feature. So it's my honor and my privilege to be here amongst all of you. So thank you for the invite again, Colleen. I appreciate it. Let's begin, shall we, and honor some of our local veterans. Specialist 4, William Hamill. Spec 4 Hamill served in the United States Army from 1961 to 1963, took his basic training at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and jump school at Fort Benning, Georgia, and served as a partsman in the motor pool. While stationed at Fort Campbell, his unit convoyed to Fort Bragg and then participated in mock war games for training for 5 days and then returned. While in Fort Campbell, he made 11 jumps out of a C-130 airplane. Now, William also owns a classic military ambulance that, because of the weather, originally was planning on bringing it here today, could not bring it, but this vehicle, in addition to showing up at all the various car shows throughout the year, also has a personal touch for himself because he has a very large family history of military veterans, including his father and grandfathers, aunt, 2 sons, 3 grandsons currently serving right now. So when he opens up the back of the ambulance, it's a showcase of his family. So if you have a chance to see it, and it shows up quite often throughout the better weather, check that out. Spec 4 Hamill is a member of the Military Vehicle Preservation Association. In 2021, he was in a convoy from South Dakota to Conneaut, Ohio for D-Day as part of the MVPA. Specialist 4 William Hamill, thank you for your service. Chief Warrant Officer Glenn N. Martin. Chief Warrant Officer Martin served in the United States Army from 1965 to 1970, took his basic training at Fort Polk, Louisiana, and served as a helicopter pilot. He was deployed to Vietnam in 1967 to the Marble Mountain facility in Da Nang, the 282nd Assault Helicopter Company, 3rd Platoon Armed Helicopters. There were 56 members in the platoon, 17 of them were pilots, and the rest were gunners and crew chiefs. He worked with many Marines and Special Forces in I Corps. After his service, he continued to fly helicopters. He's worked for 8 years flying for the Allegheny General Life Flights. He was chief pilot for National Fuel Gas and worked with the utility construction performing search and rescue when power lines were damaged. Chief Warrant Officer Glenn M. Martin, welcome home and thank you for your service. Sergeant Earl A. Brown. Sergeant Brown served in the United States Army from 1965 to 1968. Served as a Special Agent, Army Intelligence. He took his basic training at Fort Knox, Kentucky, and MOS training at Fort Holabird, Baltimore, Maryland. He served in 5019 Military Intelligence Battalion before deployed to Vietnam in 1966 and 67. He was a liaison with the Vietnamese Military Security Service at Go Cong Province. He served as a Special Agent, the Counterterrorism Intelligence Service, and was sent out to different provinces as a liaison. After the service, he's been a member of the Veterans of the Vietnam War Post 52 and VFW Post 2006 and has extensive involvement at his church, United Methodist Church of Mount Hope. Sergeant Earl A. Brown, welcome home and thank you for your service. Master Sergeant David R. Colvin, retired. Master Sergeant Colvin served in the United States Marine Corps from 1973 to 1995. Took his basic training at Parris Island, South Carolina, served as a truck driver, loaded and unloaded ships and aircraft. While deployed on the USS Vancouver, he was involved in Operation Eagle Pool, the evacuation of Cambodia, and also Frequent Winds, the evacuation of Saigon, South Vietnam. They used air evacuation using HMH 462 helicopters and were able to evacuate 300 Vietnam refugees. He then served at Guantanamo National Crime Information Center of refuelers with the Presidential Squadron and Motor Transportation. He received his high school diploma from the Department of Defense while stationed in Okinawa. And 1975, the same school his son attended his freshman year. After the service, Master Sergeant Colvin is a life member of the VFW and American Legion. He's helped build 3 houses for Habitat for Humanity in North Carolina and has taught religious education at Quantico, Virginia. Master Sergeant David R. Colvin, welcome home and thank you for your service. Sergeant Edward A. Johnson. Sergeant Johnson was with the United States Marine Corps from 1962 to 1968. He took his basic training at Parris Island, South Carolina. His MOS was rocket launcher, demolition, and flamethrower. Pleasantries, weren't they? Yeah. Invite you over for a barbecue. He served in Hawaii in the 4th Marine Brigade and then to Quantico, Virginia, the home of the Marine Corps schooling for second lieutenants. And one day he was out coaching them on the rifle range in 90-degree weather when a commanding officer came out and said he wanted to see if he had typing classes prior to his service. And Sergeant Johnson stated he did. The officer then told him to go with him, and he was taken to an air-conditioned office, served as a clerk. Finished his service traveling with the amphibious warfare team all over the country to all the sister branches of the service, teaching them about the Marine Corps. And by the way, dangerous mission, he was in charge of the slide projector. After his service, he served as a fireman in Meadville City Fire Department until his retirement. Sergeant Edward A. Johnson, thank you for your service. Spec 4 Charles P. Schaefer. Specialist Force Schaefer served with the United States Army from 1986 to 1991. He took his basic training at Fort Dix, New Jersey, jump school at Aberdeen, Maryland, air assault training at Fort Campbell, and served in heavy wheel vehicle repair. He served in the Gulf, Desert Storms, and Desert Shields. After his service, he's been a member of the American Legion, Post 381, Cambridge Springs, and VFW Post 169, Venango. Also coached travel softball when his daughter was playing. Spec 4 Charles P. Schaefer, thank you for your service. Private Gregory L. Henry. PFC Henry served with the United States Army from 1985 to 1989. He took his basic training at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and culinary school at Fort Lee, Virginia, and served as a cook. He served in Texas 1 year and then spent the rest of his time in Germany. His daughter was born in a German hospital and had dual citizenship until she was 21. After his service, he's been a member of the American Legion in Sagertown and also has been a 4-H leader. Private Gregory L. Henry, thank you for your service. Seaman Catherine E. Kelly. Seaman Kelly served with the United States Navy from 1974 to 1976 as a hospital corpsman. She took her basic training at Great Lakes Naval Academy. She's always been interested in working in the hospital and helping others. She served at Balboa Hospital, the world's largest West Coast naval hospital in San Diego, California. Now, today's something special for Seaman Catherine E. Kelly. It's a special triple play of family members being honored today. She is here today to receive her Quilt of Valor along with her son, Paul Kelly, and daughter, Grace Pennington. Seaman Catherine E. Kelly, thank you for your service. As we said, this is a family affair. Senior Airman Pennington, let's say Senior Airman Grace E. Pennington. Senior Airman Pennington served in the United States Air Force from 2001 to 2003. She took her basic training at Lackland Air Force Base, Lackland, Texas, and served as a contract specialist. She was stationed at Mountain Home Air Force Base in southwest Idaho. The base's primary mission was to provide combat air power and support for worldwide contingency operations. Following the terrorist attacks on 9/11/2001, the wing sent out a base operation package to Air Base in Qatar, and there transformed the bare base into a fully functional airfield for large-scale combat operations. After her service, she volunteered to work feeding the homeless in Dayton, Ohio. Senior Airman Grace E. Pennington, thank you for your service. Sergeant Paul T. Kelly. Sergeant Kelly served in the United States Marine Corps from 1998 to 2002. He took his basic training at Parris Island, South Carolina. He served as a Stinger gunner, low altitude air defense. He was deployed from 2000 to 2001 in the Mediterranean with the 22nd Marine Expedition Unit. He's received a Marine Corps commendation from his commander as well. After his service, he's been a medevac helicopter pilot for 21 years out of Grove City, PA. Sergeant Paul T. Kelly, thank you for your service. Sergeant David A. Rowland. Sergeant Rowland served in the United States Marine Corps from 2005 to 2009. He took his basic training at Parris Island, South Carolina, and served in advance in armor leadership. He was then stationed at Camp Lejeune. He was deployed to Iraq in 2007 with the 1st Battalion, 10th Marines to protect police interaction training with the Iraqi military. He served with the 2nd Engineer Battalion as head of armory and 2nd Engineer Combat Battalion. After his service, he's a life member of the American Legion and VFW, and also works at Project Healing Waters, fly fishing for veterans. He was also a prison guard from 2010 to 2023. Sergeant David A. Rowland, thank you for your service. Chief Petty Officer Daniel L. Spencer, Jr., retired. Chief Petty Officer Spencer served with the United States Navy from 1998 to 2018. Took his basic training at Great Lakes Naval Academy and Culinary School at San Antonio, Texas, and served as a cook. Served on 5 different submarines: the USS Pittsburgh, the USS Pennsylvania, the USS Nevada, the USS Springfield, and the USS Pittsburgh again. He's always said serving on a submarine is like taking a trip in an RV without windows with 100 of your closest friends. He finished up his career serving at Walter Reed Hospital. After the service, he's been a life member of the VFW, Venango, and a member of the Navy Submarine Vets. He coaches wrestling and helped coach baseball. Him and his wife are both involved in several community events, including PTO at the school where the children go to. Chief Petty Officer Daniel L. Spencer, Jr., retired, thank you for your service. And our final quilt today, Petty Officer 2nd Class Eric T. Gable. Petty Officer 2nd Class Gable served in the United States Navy from 2003 to 2012. He took his basic training at Great Lakes Naval Academy and advanced training at Shepherd Air Force Base in Texas. He took 2 tours to Iraq. The first was to Fort Zeus and served as a prison guard. Second tour is convoy security, escorting convoys across the country of Iraq. He received the Navy Achievement Medal and Army Achievement Medal. He was a CB and worked with the Army and Marines most of the time. Petty Officer 2nd Class Eric T. Gable, thank you for your service. And once again, it's an honor to be in the presence of these heroes right here in our own hometown. And most of them are saying, no, it's not me. But yes, today it's about you. And thank you all for your service. Again, a round of applause for all these veterans.
Some people are taller than I am. Friends, you can't live without them. Like Rich said, we'd like to thank each one of you for your service. We appreciated each one of you. Something that was not mentioned, which I should have had on the script, was Eric's quilt was made by his mother. So before we award the quilts, we'd like to take the time to let you know what a quilt, the significance of a quilt is to the veteran and to the quilter. I have Kathy. She's going to be our Vanna today. She's going to have fun trying to figure out where to be and not be in somebody's way. Each quilt is made with 3 layers, as you saw each quilt up here. The top of the quilt, or the front of the quilt, is made of many colors, shapes, sizes of fabric put together to represent our community and the many individuals that are in it. The batting, or the filling of the quilt, is the center of the quilt. I hope you guys never see. It represents our hope that the quilt will bring warmth, comfort, peace, and healing to the individual that receives it. The back of the quilt is the strength of the quilt. It supports all the other layers, and it represents the strength of the recipient, the support of his or her family, our communities, and our nation. Each stitch, which is hard to see on the sample, but afterwards you can come up and see the quilts up front. Each stitch that holds the quilt together represents the love, gratitude, and often the tears of the maker. It brings a 3-part message from our hearts. Thank you, Kathy. First, we honor you for your service. We honor you for leaving all that you hold dear, whether in a time of crisis or in a time of peace. Second, the quilters know that freedom is not free. The cost is the dedication of lives of men and women like you, and the quilt is meant to say thank you for your service and sacrifice. Third and finally, this quilt is meant to offer you comfort, and to remind you that although your family and friends cannot always be with you, you are always in our thoughts and prayers. At this time, I would like to have a family member, preferably just one family member, come up forward so that we can wrap the quilt around the veteran. We have a quilter on one side and a veteran on, or a family member on the other side. So if there is a family member, would you please come up and join your...
You could just come one side.
Good luck.
Like that. Does he have somebody, Kathy? You're fine. You're fine. Okay, ladies, if you'll take the one side, give the other side to the family member, and wrap the quilt around the veteran. Make sure you give them a quilting hug and say thank you for their service.
We love doing it.
Once everyone has been wrapped, which they have, Quilts of Valor is not given like a book or magazine, but with a quilt, or with a hug. One side, like I said, is the quilter, and the other side is a family member or close friend. The reason for the quilting hug is so that if you're ever feeling alone, battling the demons of war, just having a bad day, you can again wrap the quilt around yourself and feel the hug that you just received, and remember that you are not alone. You have the love, support, and gratitude of all of us, family, friends, quilters, community, and nation. On behalf of PA Stitchers of Valor and the entire Quilts of Valor family and a grateful nation, with our deepest appreciation, we thank you for your service to our country. Ladies, under the chair is their certificate and a pillowcase, or a carrying case, as they call it. The certificate states, the Quilts of Valor Foundation wishes to recognize you for your service to our nation. We consider it our privilege to do so. Though we may never know the extent of your sacrifice to protect and defend the United States of America, we award you this Quilt of Valor as an expression of gratitude from a grateful nation. It has been an honor to be here today with you to recognize these veterans with their Quilt of Valor. Thank you to the veterans for their service. Thank you, Active Aging, and through the Veterans Eye Committee for the invite. At the close of this program today, we would try to get a group photo, but that's going to be impossible. So if this side would look towards the center, and he can get your picture. Now. Okay. And this side, if you guys would look to the center. Okay, thank you. Now, these veterans have all been nominated to receive these quilts today. If there is a veteran here that has never received a quilt from us and would like to be a part of that, would you please see one of us afterwards and fill out a yellow form. If you have a family member that you know of that has never received a quilt from us and has served, please take one of these forms. If you could hand it back to us, that would be great. That concludes our service today. We want to say again, thank you all for coming, supporting our veterans in any way. Veterans, happy Veterans Day. I almost said Father's Day, but. And you're dismissed. Make sure you come up and say thank you to the veteran.
Thank you for your service.